Hi, everybody. Ian Bremmer here. It's a new year, which means a new list of top risks from Eurasia Group. Every year for 20 years now, we publish a forecast of the biggest 10 political risks and some red herrings that we think are likely to play out over the year. The way we rate these risks is the impact, the likelihood, and the imminence all together over the course of the coming year. So we're not thinking about risks that are going to have a big impact in 10 years. And by big, we really mean that it's going to have global implications, that you are most likely to be experiencing some level of implication from the risk having happened, no matter who you are watching, reading, paying attention to this report. Then at the end of the year, we go back and we see how we did, affect our thinking accordingly. We're going to go through all of these risks and look at the herrings going forward here. And 2026, I have to say, is sort of a tipping point year because the United States, which is the most powerful country in the world, is the principal driver of geopolitical uncertainty, not about conflict between the US and China. A lot of people have talked about that. It's certainly still an adversarial relationship, but it's not a big risk for 2026. In fact, it's a herring, not about the United States and Russia coming to blows despite the war over Ukraine. Indeed, the United States is in many ways more aligned, more engaged with the Russians than NATO allies are. No, it's about the United States undoing its own global order and having the willingness and capacity to drive that disruption. That is the big backdrop for the risks in 2026. That's the big backdrop for the GZERO, not G7, not G20 world that we've been looking at for over 10 years now. And that's how we're going to start off by looking at risk number one. Risk number one is US political revolution. And that's a big word. Revolution. There's only been 3 revolutions in states in our lifetimes that have had global implications. One in China under Deng Xiaoping, an economic revolution that brought China into the global economy and led to the biggest explosion of economic growth in a major country that we've ever witnessed. The second, a political and economic revolution in the Soviet Union under Gorbachev that failed and led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. And a third, a political revolution in the United States by President Trump meant to weaponize political institutions and levers of power that Trump believes has been weaponized against him, undo the administrative state, make it loyal to the presidency, and reduce or destroy the checks and balances on the US executive. We do not know whether the political revolution in the United States will be successful or not. What we do know is that it is underway. Thus far, the checks and balances have been weaker than most would have expected. The Republican Party is completely loyal to Trump. There's been no significant signs of fragmentation to date. The members of the administration this time around, compared to Trump's first term, are incredibly loyal to Trump. There's been almost no leaks from inside the administration compared to the first term. Broadly, you've had a number of institutions that have been a lot weaker in responding than one might have expected. The Democrats in Congress, for example, the corporate institutions, the financial institutions, the corporate media, privately have been concerned, but publicly have been very unwilling to take on an oppositional role for fear that they're going to get steamrolled or worse. All of those things make it more likely that the political revolution will be more successful before it is halted, if it is halted. But certainly playing out over the course of this year with midterm elections in November, with right now a relatively unpopular US president that understands that he could easily lose the House, whose numbers are relatively light, especially on key issues like the economy, affordability, immigration, treatment of immigrants in the United States. Those things make it more likely that Trump will double down on his efforts not that he will back down, because he feels that if the principal enemies to the United States, as he believes, domestically in the US, not China, not Russia, not anybody else, if they are returned to power, then it is the end for him, that they're gonna go to jail or worse. And so the likelihood that this political revolution expands and becomes a much more significant story of instability, of uncertainty, of unreliability of the United States for other countries around the world is indeed very substantial. Why is it risk number one? Not only because this is unprecedented in our lifetimes, and indeed Trump is the most revolutionary president the US has seen since FDR, and we would argue even including the efforts that he put into place, which at the end of the day were aligned with Congress. He didn't pack and expand the court because of resistance. He didn't engage in destroying existing checks and balances on the executive. In many ways, he actually strengthened them, though he did expand dramatically the role of the administrative state. That is certainly true. No, President Trump reflects a much more substantial disruption to US political norms, institutions, checks and balances in the most powerful country in the world. And so irrespective of whether he's successful or he fails, certainly irrespective of whether you want him to be successful or you'd rather he fails, that's not relevant to the risk. The point is that that driver of uncertainty in the United States is risk number one for 2026.